But let's talk a little bit about the marketplace where IODG was, the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Some folks think that it's just good to look at the biggest companies on our market, and about 50 of them have been identified as the leading lights of the NSE. So what is it all about, and why is this very important when you look at the stock market as the bastion of what you call capitalism? Let's talk to Samson Davis, who is the CEO at True Nigerian Experience in Abuja. It's from our Abuja studios. Samson, it's good to see you on the show this morning.
Thank you, Bosi, for inviting me over.
Great. So what is the motivation for this ranking of the 50 biggest companies on the Nigerian Stock Exchange?
Yeah, basically, we've been able to see the U.S. economy rank their, 500 biggest companies by revenue. The U.S. economy has also been able to rank the biggest companies in America by market cap, which is what we all know as the Standard & Poor's 500. So the idea is there are some Nigerian companies that are also doing way better than some of these globally recognized entities. And when you look at the ranking list, you find it difficult to see a substantial number of Nigerian companies, if at all they will be recognized in any form. So what we have done is to look into the financials of both, companies and both economies, across the world. What are Nigerian companies doing in terms of gross revenue? What are they doing in terms of market capitalization? What are they doing in terms of profitability? In comparison with their counterparts in the United States, in comparison with their counterparts in China, in comparison with their counterparts, in the Middle East. So what we have done is to partner with the Nigerian Stock Exchange, to identify and rank the first ever 50 biggest companies in Nigeria by market cap.
So who are the big boys within this club 50?
Basically, you start with the likes of Dangote Cement. The ranking was done as early as March 11, 2019. And it was published in July, 2019 by Forbes Africa. Number one on the list is Dangote Cement with a market cap of an equivalent of $10.8 billion as at that time. Followed by the likes of Nestle Nigeria with a market cap of about $3.9 billion. And then Guaranty Trust Bank, emerged as the biggest bank in Nigeria with a market cap of 3.6 billion naira, $billion, followed by the likes of Zenith Bank, who had a market cap at that time of $3 billion as well, and Nigerian Breweries at $2 billion. So these are the top five, of the 50 biggest companies. There are about 49 in total, with a minimum benchmark of 50 billion naira minimum or $50 million.
So what does it really mean, using these 50 biggest companies trying to benchmark the global best practice, as you talk about the Wall Street there, the New York Stock Exchange, in terms of being a barometer for others? Will this be an annual ranking? Will it be reviewed? Will you review the parameters for this ranking at any point?
Absolutely. What might be reviewed might be to include it beyond the 50 companies to maybe 100 companies, so that we have more companies accommodated. For now, we're focused on companies that are publicly listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. There are advice coming to us, to consider companies that are also not listed. But we have looked at the standards, that are used globally. Take, for instance, Forbes Global 2000, which is published, every year. So this particular project called Signature 50 is also meant to be published annually, in partnership with the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So the idea basically is to look at what is obtainable abroad, what is obtainable, in the United States, what is acceptable anywhere in the world. And that's why we have set the ranking to be in dollars, in United States dollars mainly. Take, for instance, Standard & Poor's is ranked based on the listing on New York Stock Exchange by market cap, or to be listed on NASDAQ. If you also look at Fortune 500, it talks about the top 500 companies in the world by revenue, that are public, that their financials are publicly available. So our focus is also to follow that light. And if you also look at the Forbes Global 2000, it's mainly, focused on the 2,000 biggest companies in the world, that are publicly listed, and not private entities, not private ownership of companies, basically. So what we have done is to consider only companies that are listed, and this is definitely going to be published every year.
Very interesting. Samson Davis, thank you so much for coming through this morning. We appreciate the work you're doing. Let's bring in some of those best global practices in terms of ranking the companies on our market, as it gives more visibility to them and, of course, impact the what goes on at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Thank you very much for contributing your role, whatever you can do to get our markets better in terms of being in line with international marketplace. Thank you so much, Samson Davis, through from Abuja studios. Let's talk about the Brexit train. We're now down to the final 24 hours to that crucial EU summit. So how are the markets reacting to what we call a flashing optimism? It flashes green, then it goes a little bit to amber, then it goes red, then it goes green all over again. I'm not just sure where I was flashing right now. Let me ask Juliana Olayinka, my colleague from our London studios. What is it flashing right now as far as Brexit? Is it red, is it amber, or is it green?
Good morning, Bosun. I'd say it's pretty much grey at the moment, and it depends on who you really talk to. Just before I came on air, Reuters news agency, they posted some breaking news saying that the Brexit negotiations have reached a stumbling block. Just minutes before that, the British Brexit Secretary Stephen Barclay, he's back in London for a fleeting visit, sitting in front of some government select committee members. And he said there is a draft text that is with the EU 27. So really, it depends on who you talk to. But one thing that's for sure, and you just said it, time is really running out. We're down to the wire. We do know that both the UK and the EU are striving to get a deal before that crucial summit tomorrow. Negotiations are being described as a marathon at the moment. Yesterday, they didn't finish till way after midnight. But, there's a lot to play for. There's a lot of focus at the moment on getting this legal text document through to Michel Barnier, the chief negotiator for the EU, so he can get it through to the 27 other leaders before the start of the summit. But then, Theresa May did that. Theresa May was able to secure a deal with the EU. The issue that she had was getting it through the Commons. So, Boris Johnson at the moment is juggling one or two sides. On one hand, he's got to convince the EU, but on the other hand, he has to convince his fellow MPs in a really kind of toxic, hostile environment at the moment, not just with members of the opposition, also within leaders of his own parties. We are hearing that some of the concessions that Boris Johnson is having to make are things that will keep parts of Northern Ireland's current trade deal exactly the same. Can he convince hardline Brexiteers within his own party that Brexit won't just be in name? Can he also convince the DUP, the Northern Irish Party, that are keeping him in government, that this deal is a deal that can work? So there's lots going on. But one of the most important things now, I think a lot of people here in the UK are going to be focusing on whether or not the Commons MPs will back his deal on Saturday.
Okay. Let's just squeeze in something for the consumers market here, despite the big stories around Brexit. So where's the shares of ASOS rising with when this retailer is reporting a plunge in profit? If you tie that very quickly in about a minute or two with Primark saying, I shouldn't buy their products online. Why is this warning coming out from Primark, which is a major retailer for Londoners and even for Nigerians?
Primark, very, very big discount retailer. They had to put out a tweet yesterday, actually, saying, look, we're not online. Very rare. They're one of the only retailers that don't have an online store, but they were responding to reports that you can buy their products in Amazon, which, according to Primark, you cannot. And if you can, it's usually customers that are trying to upsell their products. Funny, though, when they put that tweet out, a lot of their customers were saying, well, you better go online because we're going to keep buying them from Amazon. Contrary to that, ASOS, as seen on screen, they're a massive online retailer. Their profits, their year-to-year profits plunged 68%. 100 million they had last year. This year it's 31 million, but their shares rose 16% at the start of trading because their shareholders believe in their vision. And one of the reasons why their profits fell is because they couldn't deal with the demand when they expanded in the US and Europe. So not a good day for their profits, but a good day for their shareholders because they believe in the vision of ASOS.
Okay, nice one. I'm sure you have a lot more to chew with Oyebisi Adebayo in the afternoon on Business Incorporated at 1:30. Thank you. I'll leave you ladies then. I'll be having some lunch backstage. Thank you so much, Juliana. Let's take a break, everyone. We'll come back. That will be the opening calls for our market street here in Nigeria.